large population yet to be connected online, APAC offers as many opportunities as many challenges to those trying to operate in this ecosystem. Katsuya, Chief Investment Officer at IFC, talks to me now on how the emerging markets are inventing the edge computing. Carlos, thanks a lot for talking to me. We spoke last year, we spoke about the trends and how the industry is growing in this region, but how have you seen the things changing in the last 12 months, especially driven by edge computing?
Okay, I think the main thing that we've seen in this region has been the fact that, first of all, the international large data center companies have not taken that leap of faith to go into emerging markets yet. I think they are still working on that. On the other hand, many of the smaller, leaner, PE-backed firms, they have shown a lot of interest in an appetite to take the risk and move into those markets. So in that sense, I think especially Indonesia, India, those are still kind of one of the hottest targets for those firms.
And how has investment strategies changed in the region, especially in those two markets, for example, like Philippines and India? Have investments really grown? Are we still talking about it but not really seeing much activity?
Well, at the risk of sounding very politically incorrect, I would say that a market like Indonesia, right? The data centers in Indonesia have been the next big thing to happen in the next 6 months for the last 5 years. Okay,
that's true.
Right. So I think there is a lot of buzz. Everybody knows that the demand is there. It will happen, right? But we haven't seen that promise materialize yet. Okay, I think there are stronger signs that there are more people interested in doing that. So, for instance, Excel, right? Excel, the Axiata-owned mobile operator, they ran a process to sell 5 of their 5 data centers recently. I know that there was demand from at least 3 potential buyers, all of them backed by PE firms. Okay, it was a small transaction, and yet there was appetite for those assets. So I think we are starting to see, right, that kind of demand, but you know, the big bang that everybody has been expecting to happen for a while, it hasn't yet.
Okay, but even those small transactions that we're starting to see, they do represent a shift in mentality, probably.
They do, they do.
This is probably driven by consumer demands and the consumer growth in terms of using online services. But a lot of the conversation now, especially in the West, people are very interested about data sovereignty laws and how this is going to shift the tables around Asia. Do you have any views on the data sovereignty laws? What's happening in terms of investment, if this is already driving any investment, or the conversations at least?
It should. It hasn't as much as we expected. For instance, if we're talking about Indonesia again, Indonesia enacted their data sovereignty law in 2017, okay? And yet things haven't happened. And that has to do, to a large extent, on 2 aspects. First, Indonesia is right next door to Singapore, right? So a lot of Indonesian companies had been and continue to use Singapore as their data hub. But the second and most important element is the fact that although the law was enacted, right, very few players believe that the government of Indonesia would be enforcing that law, or that they would have the capabilities to do so.
So the problem is actually beyond the industry.
It's beyond the industry. So it started to happen, right? So we have seen some of the companies to move their data back into Indonesia, but yet not so much into, well, there is some movement around Jakarta, but there is also a growth interest in some of the facilities in Bintan, Batam, those islands in the outskirts of Singapore.
And then, out of interest, and because I know you look into Indonesia quite a lot, do you see Indonesia has maybe one of the biggest hotspots for edge computing in Asia?
Probably.
Okay.
Probably, I would say so. Right? I mean, if you look at Indonesia, the demographics, right? First of all, talking about, it's a huge population, very young, okay, very data savvy. I think I read somewhere that Indonesia is the 2nd largest market for Facebook, right?
I wouldn't be surprised.
Right? So in that sense, right, I think there is a need for, I mean, and if you've tried to use your cell phone or your smartphone in Jakarta, you know that there is desperate need for improved latency and things like that, right? So better services. So I would imagine that there is definitely room for edge in Indonesia.
It's also one of the largest markets for WeChat. So it'll be interesting to see how the Americans will compete with the Asians and the Asians against the Americans for the edge computing markets.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then of the other markets that you look into, so you look pretty much into emerging markets.
Yes.
What maybe one that would really stand out apart from Indonesia?
I mean, the two largest markets, emerging markets in Asia are by far China and India,
Okay.
right?
So you still consider China as an emerging market? Or would you separate like Beijing, Shanghai from the rest of the country?
Exactly. So, for example, IFC, we were investors in GDS, right? In yes, many years ago. But we have already exited that investment to a large extent because we thought that our role had already been fulfilled in that particular investment. We are still a shareholder in a data center in India, right? NextGen in Bangalore. We see the market in India still kind of booming, right? There is a lot of growth to come. We have seen many of the PE-backed firms kind of moving into India. So you've seen people like Bridge, backed by Bain, right? Going into India. But on the other hand, you haven't seen, except for NTT, right? You haven't seen really the big international firms going into India yet.
It'll be interesting. And again, we always say in the next 2 to 3 years. And we've been saying it for many
But
years.
the problem is that in a market like India, it's, I think if I were in their shoes, I think the attractiveness is so obvious, right? That people need to take that leap of faith. The demand is there, the market is there, it's ripe, right? We are seeing all of those PE-backed firms going into those markets and they are developing their business. In my opinion, what will happen in a few years is that when those international firms decide to move in, they will end up buying whatever assets have been built by those PE firms, but they'll have to pay a premium.
Okay. When you say a leap of faith, and well, this is a bit of a naive question, but leap of faith, do investors have this leap of faith? Are they able to even have this leap of faith?
Well,
because it is one of those markets that you got to throw yourself into and then expect the best, I guess.
Which one? India?
India, for example,
I
which
don't
most likely will deliver anyway.
No, I mean, India, I mean, of course, it's not like, regardless of what you do, things will work, right? Of course, it's a market with its peculiarities, and it's a market going through very profound transformations, right? The telecom sector in India today is completely different from what it was 3 years ago.
It's been completely disrupted.
Completely disrupted, right? So so clearly, it's not a market without risks. Okay. However, right, I think it's just to some extent because of all the changes that are occurring there, right? People need to follow it very closely, right, and be prepared to move in at the right opportunity, right? Because there is a window, right, and that window will eventually close, right? One of the issues that we see in India, right, that will obviously have an impact on data center operators is the fact that, for instance, when it comes to connectivity, right, probably in a few months, we will be talking about only two providers of fiber connectivity in India, right, because of all the consolidation that is happening in that market, right?
It's usually not a good thing.
So that could have an impact on how this business will evolve.
Okay. And right now we are at the Edge Asia 2019. It's the first of the Asian series that comes into Asia. What do you expect in the next 12 months to happen? So what do you expect at Edge 2020 to be talked about? One big event, one big investment, something big that will happen in the next 12 months you expect to happen that we'll be talking about this time next year? Well,
you know, I hope that next year will be a much better, much stronger story to talk about in emerging markets, right? So
a delivered case.
Yes, right? Something that we could present as a real, successful, and concrete case to be discussed.
Okay, you're tasked
I
We'll
hope
be
so.
bringing that next year. All right, Carlos, thanks a lot for talking to me.
Thank you very much.
Don't forget you can follow Data Economy on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, and also visit the website on www.data-economy.com.